Greetings and welcome to episode 69 of Morrowind Rebirth Showcases, and as always I'm your host Dark Elf Guy, and today we're going to be taking a look at 13 randomly themed mods, including some rather scenic and beautiful new additions to the game, new dungeons, quests, some rather odd looking Landmass mods, among many other things. Most notably, we will not be covering any sex toy mods. I believe someone suggested that last time, and as always, this is very much a family-friendly mod channel, so we will not be covering any adult-themed mods, sex toys or otherwise, in the foreseeable future. That said, you'll find download links down in the video description below. So let's go ahead and get started with our popular mod of the week, which this week is Meteorite Ministry by Zobator. And what this mod does is pretty simple. It adds a trail of rocks as a sort of tail of debris coming off of the Ministry of Truth. As most of you downloads already know, Lord Vivek, according to legend, stopped the Ministry of Truth from crashing into the city, suspending it in the sky, and now you can sort of, better appreciate the dramatic impact of this, halted, fast-moving object. Before in the vanilla game, the Ministry always looked a little plain, a single giant rock just floating in the sky without any real clear indication of direction or movement, which is perhaps why there's been more than a few mods like this to give the Ministry of Truth some more dramatic visuals, such as Prison Moon Enhanced, which we showcased way back in episode 4 of Morrowind Rebirth Showcases. And anyway, we're just going to take a look at the Ministry with its new Meteorite trail here from a couple of different directions and locations, because, of course, with the right distant land settings, you can see this dramatic vista from pretty far away. And it should be noted here that this mod comes with about 3 different versions. One that increases the height of the Ministry of Truth so it's high in the sky, one that changes the direction of the Meteorite trail, and one that combines both changes. And, right now I'm using the more horizontal trail option, with the Ministry of Truth at the vanilla game height. And I have to say, this is just really a kind of beautiful and fantastic mod, and it's really just quite surprising how beautiful this mod is. It's kind of crazy that just adding a few more floating rocks to the Ministry of Truth could just so vastly change the cityscape here and create such a scenic vista. But it really does, and it's rather, I would say, mesmerizing. I probably spent the better part of 40 or 50 minutes just flying around and observing the Ministry of Truth with its Meteorite trail here from different locations and different times of day. There's just something about this edition that makes you want to look up at the skies when you're traveling around Vivek or even visiting nearby Ebonheart. And just real quick, here you can see one of the other versions, which changes the direction of the Meteorite trail, so it's pointing directly towards the temple. And the trail here is a bit more, sort of vertical, going up at a steep angle into the sky, than the more horizontal trail that we saw in the other version we just looked at. And that, was just sort of hanging over the city. And both versions are just incredibly scenic, and this is just a wonderful and breathtakingly beautiful little atmospheric and immersion mod to add to your game. And, I would really just highly recommend it. For our House Mod of the Week this week, we have Sadrith Mora Housepod, Morrowind Rebirth compatible by Ash Poet. And now we couldn't quite fit this mod into our Telvanni themed episode the other week. And like I said back then, there's just a lot of Telvanni house mods like this. But anyway, this mod adds a new mushroom-style house pod to the city of Sadrith Mora here. Right here along the market district on the way to the Telvanni Council Chambers. And going inside, this is a rather nice looking and well-finished Telvanni abode, with a study area and a display area down here on the first floor, including 2 sets of bookshelves and a table, for you to use. And upstairs, you'll find the master bedroom, including a desk, some containers and storage, another bookshelf that you can use for displaying items, and all in all, like pretty much all of Ash Poet's house mods, this is a pretty small but cozy abode to call home. And it does have some overpowering loot, with a set of limeware dishes and the like, but otherwise it's a nice and simple starter Telvanni home that's also compatible with Morrowind Rebirth, which is, always a nice feature. And this week's gameplay mod of the week is MWSC 2.1 Enchantment Services by SV Engineer 99. And now we kind of showcase this mod already as part of our MWSC 2.0 showcase for the Morrowind Mod of the Month for February 2018. But I wanted to do a dedicated showcase just on enchantment services here, so we're kind of just, covering it again. And basically what this mod does is add 3 completely new services to the game for NPCs to provide you in much the same way as they currently provide services like enchanting, item repair, spell making, and so on and so forth. And these services include 2 new enchanting related services, item recharging and scroll transcribing, and 1 new service associated with sorcerers called scroll deciphering. And starting out with a scroll transcription here, this service allows you to make copies of any magical related scrolls in the base game. And when I say any, that really just sort of depends on the enchanter that you're dealing with, and their related enchanting skill level. Some magical scrolls will be beyond the ability of normal enchanters to transcribe. But regardless, you can just sort of hover the mouse cursor over scrolls in your inventory to see their transcription fee. And then you can just drag and drop them into the transcription inventory and select however many you want. So if you want 5 new scrolls of the first barrier, you can just select that. Or if you want 30 new scrolls of divine intervention, well, you can also select that too. Assuming, of course, that you can afford the transcribing fee. And this is just a really handy way to build up a stockpile of magical scrolls to use on your adventures, instead of just relying on random loot drops out in the wilderness. And another somewhat useful service here is item recharging, so you can have enchanters recharge enchanted items for a slight fee, and this is usually pretty cheap, at least when compared to the other services here, and this is a nice way to get all your enchanted items recharged without having to, spend a whole day in bed sleeping, which was one of the main ways of regenerating enchanted item charges in Vanilla Morrowind. Now, the last service to check out here is the Scroll Deciphering service, and this is a really cool one actually. It allows you to take magical scrolls to a sorcerer, like this one, and to just have them decipher the spell inscribed on the scrollwork here, so you can just add this new spell to your magical library. And I can't quite remember for sure, but I think some of these magical scrolls, didn't have magical spell counterparts, or if they did, I just can't remember them. Either way, if you can't find a mage with one of the spells you need, you can just use this deciphering service to copy them out of a magical scroll. And this is again just a really handy service for, mages out there. And all in all, this is a really great and useful mod for both magically inclined players and regular old Joes who could, just use some extra magical equipment. And it really demonstrates the power of the newest version of MWC as well, which of course this does, require. I would certainly recommend checking it out. It's an impressive mod and well worth your time. And next up we are our Dungeon Mod of the Week, which this week is Inner Depths 5 by JMK, and this is a continuation of JMK's long-running Inner Depths series of dungeon mods. Though I don't know if we've ever actually, showcased any of the other mods in this series, probably not if I had to guess. In any event, this mod starts out when you find an old Dunwich stronghold out in the Northern Ashlands region, a rather flat and unassuming building that looks off to sea, and this is actually a player home as it turns out. Though you'll need to go through and just, clear out all the various little critters and bandits first, who seem, of course, none too pleased to see you. And once you kill all those, critters and bandits and all that, you'll find that the stronghold does indeed have some typical housing features, like a bedroom, and some shelves and tables that you can use for, just storage or whatnot. But of course, this is a dungeon mod first and foremost, and this housing part here is just sort of the dungeon hub entrance that you can use while you clear out the rest of the dungeons here. And as with every edition of the Inner Depths series, you'll find a variety of just completely different dungeons for you to explore and fight through, including caverns, storm ruins, crypts, and so on and so forth. Usually with a few hours of gameplay content, though I think Inner Depths 5 here might actually be a bit on the smaller side of things, when compared to some of JMK's previous mods, but regardless, you'll find a lot of tunnels, corridors, rooms, and large caverns to fight through, filled to the brink with bandits, undead, doomed centurions, or, what have you. And one of the neat things here is that each of these dungeon areas comes with a boss that you can fight and defeat, and once defeated, you can open a magical gateway going between this dungeon and the house portion of this mod here that we saw earlier, and this will allow you to teleport back to the dungeon at any time, adding this small gateway onto the shelf here. And this is fairly similar to what a lot of those dungeon role-playing games on Steam do, games like Torchlight. And anyway, this is just a fairly large dungeon romp with hours of new content, and lots of things for you to fight and kill, and of course, a ton of loot. And if you like the more sort of slash and dash style of dungeon design, that's a bit more, in the D&D vein, you'll find a lot to like here. And I would also recommend just checking out the other 4 mods in this dungeon delving series. For items mod of the week this week, we have Neb Crescent, a Daedric artifact mod by Pikachu no TM. And now this one adds a rather curious orc to the Northern Ashlands, with another dead orc nearby. And this poor fellow is the wielder of a cursed blade, the Neb Crescent, an artifact of Shirgorath mentioned in the 16 Accords of Madness. It was apparently used to trick Malakath into killing his own son, and it appears something similar may have happened here. And one way or another, you'll gain access to this blade, and as you might expect, it is indeed cursed. It's a powerful weapon to be sure, But with blindness, stunted magic, and the almost complete draining of willpower and intelligence, it's not exactly an easy or practical weapon to use in combat. But anyway, we're just going to take a closer look at this legendary and famous blade, and the model work here is really pretty fantastic, with beautiful gems embedded into the sword hilt here, as well as what appears to be some digit writing engraved along the side of the hilt, and a rather nice looking curved blade, which yes, makes this a curved sword. A curved sword, obviously not meant for Nords. But anyway, this is a small mod to be sure, but one that adds a truly interesting data artifact and weapon to the game. And if you're a collector of all things rare and unique, you might want to give this mod a try, assuming of course that it doesn't just drive you insane. And either way, it's just a fun mod to check out. And this week's quest mod of the week is the 2 Lamps by Donegal, and technically speaking, this isn't exactly a quest mod per se, as we'll see here in a bit, but it does add a new tavern and some exterior detailing to the SK Knowledge region here, right next to Al-Sotha, a relatively famous Sadrith ruin, which, just seems to me like a rather dangerous place to set up a tavern, but oh well. The property here consists of the main tavern, a nearby shack, and a road leading down to a small docking platform that leads out into the Azores coast region. It's really a rather scenic spot if you ask me, despite the apparently dangerous surroundings. And not only that, but as it turns out, this tavern is actually for sale. It seems the current owner is having a bit of an issue with escaped slaves, which is to say that runaway slaves just keep showing up around the tavern, and slave hunters keep stopping by and just disrupting business and all that. And the poor fellow has had just enough of it, and is now selling everything, so it'll be someone else's problem. The tavern will cost you about 24,000 gold, and this is in fact a business mod. Not exactly a quest mod per se, but close enough. Much like with the Racer's Roost mod, and the other Baratheon mods out there, this mod allows you to earn a profit from owning a tavern, once you talk to the barkeep here, and just get the place reopened anyway. And you can check in here once a week to collect your profits, and this is just a nice way of, lining your pockets. And of course, there's a bit more here than just a business. There's also a nearby shack used by some of the assistants at the tavern, and as it so happens, the shack leads down into a set of caverns where escaped slaves can go to, just hide from any would-be slave hunters. Hence the name of the tavern, the 2 Lamps. And if you're a fan of, business mods like this, and also just happen to enjoy the Twin Lamps, this might well be an ideal mod for you to, just check out for yourself. And next up for our last mod of the week this week, we have Roscrea by Xbarrow. And once again, there is no real pronunciation guide that I can really use for Roscrea here. So if you have any advice on how to pronounce Roscrea, just, let me know in the comments below. And this was, well, a bit of a surprise release, coming out just in the last month or so, with pretty much little to no warning, and in a fairly large new landmass that you can access by ship from Fort Frostmoth. And truth be told, this is a pretty massive mod, and we're only really going to be scratching the surface here. We might end up doing a more dedicated showcase for Roscrea in the future, but for now we're just going to be doing a quick 4-minute showcase or so, and just briefly, touch upon the main features that you'll find here. Now, Roscrea is a new island off the northern coast of Skyrim, and while this is an island mentioned in lore, supposedly conquered by Earl Septim V in 3E271, there's not really a whole lot that's really known about it, which allows for a large degree of creative interpretation. And in the case of this particular Roscrea mod, the author has gone with a frozen landmass, home to a handful of Nordic villages in the same architectural style as those found on Solstein, with a mix of imperial keeps and forts here and there. Now for our showcase here, we're just going to fly around the island a bit, just to, show off some of the various landscapes here, such as snow and ice-covered mountains, which would normally be engulfed in snowstorms, but I've set the weather conditions here for clear skies just for showcasing purposes. And you also find various frozen lakes, glacial plains, thick forests, and imperial forts dotting the landscape here. And it should be noted that this particular Roscrea mod is not the same one that's been worked on by Rich of Project Tamriel, which is another reason why this was a bit of a surprise release. Before this came out, the only Roscrea project that I knew about anyway was the one being worked on for Project Tamriel. And it's, kind of surprising to find out that such an obscure island that's barely mentioned in lore at all has more than one project working to build it. Kind of a Stress McCoy effect going on here, harkening back to 2017's surprise second Stress McCoy project being worked on by the Grey Wizard, an apparently separate endeavor from the Stress McCoy mod being developed by Star Wars Gal 9875. And this all just feels, a bit like deja vu. But oh well, the more landmass mods the better, I always say. After all, we do need a lot more landmass mods. And anyway, moving back to the actual showcase here. The landscaping of this Roscrea is really pretty good. You've got some scenic mountains, forests, Nordic villages, all rather nicely crafted and designed for a detailed and atmospheric island to explore, with numerous locations to be discovered. And there's a lot to do here, naturally. We won't be delving too much into the quest lines or dungeons in today's showcase, but suffice to say there's dozens of new quests, including 2 main quest lines, as well as dozens of new dungeons, including caverns, crypts, and other various ruins to explore and fight through. There's even a few tiny gnome villages that you might come across if you explore the forest of Roscrea here, filled with tiny little gnomes and other little critters who are, of course, friendly. And not only that, but, can provide a few various quests for you to do as well. You might also come across some other somewhat unusual landmarks, like large, flying sort of, ice strongholds that you can levitate up to, which are more than likely home to a few wizards, so truth be told, I haven't, done that much investigating of all this yet, so I can't really say for sure what all you'll find up here. Needless to say, there's more than a bit of interesting content here, though. Now, not only is there a large new landmass with tons of new quests and dungeons, but there's also, curiously enough, a bit of time traveling involved in this mod, with a quest that'll take you to a future, sort of alternate Mornhold, where everything is in industrial ruin and decay, of, electric lights, industrial waste, and odd-looking modern buildings. There's a large chunk of new content here, naturally, including new types of clothing and armor, guns, and other various items, but of course, this isn't, particularly lore-friendly, and it is a bit of a just odd addition here. That said, this content is largely optional and easy to ignore if you don't want to play through it, and the author has mentioned that they may release this whole future Mornhold as a separate download going into the future, so those who would rather just, not have it in the games will have that option going forward in the future. And in any event, there's a lot of interesting stuff here, and quite a bit to do and see naturally. There are some, content restrictions with regards to level requirements, with some areas requiring that you be at least level 30 or over in order to access them. But either way, if you're looking for another large landmass mod to explore, you'll find a lot to keep you occupied here, and it's definitely worth your time to at least, give it a look at. For NPC Mod of the Week this week, we have Daggeth Volmin, Ash Zombie companion by the Drunken Mud Crab, and this one adds, well, an Ash Zombie to the middle of Mora here, which is a bit of a, strange sight to be sure, made all the more so by the fact that he has a dagger coming out of his head and apparently no face. He has quite a bit of dialogue relating to Daggeth and the 6th house, as you might expect, and you can even convince him to travel for you, if you should so desire such a strange and unusual traveling companion. And a fair warning, his dialogue is a bit, well, curious, and if you happen to ask him about his dream siphon, well, you're going to be stuck in a continuous stream of dialogue for at least a little while. And anyway, he doesn't really come with much in the way of companion features. You can order him to follow you or wait someplace, but that's about it. And he also, curiously enough, has enchanting and spellmaking services, which is a nice convenience feature, I suppose. In any event, if you should choose to accept him as a companion, he'll follow you around faithfully, despite the numerous stares of the local populace, who will no doubt find his very presence somewhat off-putting. And as you can see here, with a small army of rats, he's not a bad fighter, and can certainly help out with various pest problems, like Nyx hounds, or, possibly even those pesky mud crabs that are always, just causing trouble. And if you're looking for another, just a unique companion mod, you may want to give this one a try. This week's new meshes and textures mod of the week is Velothi Retexture by Logan. And as you might expect from the name here, this is a complete retexture of the Velothi and Vivec architecture tile sets, including both the common Velothi buildings and the cantons in Vivec City itself, as you can see here. And these textures are sort of similar to the traditional color scheme of the Velothi architecture set, with a bit of a sort of tan and green coloring. Though unlike some of the other newer Velothi texture replacers out there, this one gives the cantons of Vivec a slightly worn appearance, with a fading plaster and a sort of worn cobblestone appearance. But the colors here are still more vibrant than in vanilla Morrowind. And anyway, we're just going to fly around Vivec here for a bit, so you can see these new textures. And as with pretty much every Logan texture replacer mod out there, these seem to be, of pretty decent quality and high resolution. coming in 2K resolution support, I believe, making this one of the high resolution texture replacer packages for the Vivek and Velothi architecture sets. Though both Vivek and the Velothi architecture sets in general have been getting a lot of attention in recent years, including normal mapping support, so this is by no means the only more modern replacer for this architecture set. And it should be noted that Logan did mention possibly releasing an OpenMW normal mapping patch for this replacer in the future, though I don't know if he still intends to do that or not. And now real quick, we're just going to stop by the 4 1/4 Plaza so you can see some of these textures on, more traditional Velothi style buildings. And again, for the most part, they feel sort of similar to the vanilla Morrowind textures as far as color scheme goes, though obviously at a high resolution. And as you might notice, I do have a few random textures installed here with regards to some of the signs and plant life in here. Obviously, these aren't included in Velothi retexture, they're just leftovers from previous mods that we've showcased. And in any event, this is a rather scenic texture replacer for the Vivek and Velothi architecture set, though obviously it won't be to everyone's taste. Seems to me like people get really awfully opinionated when it comes to texture replacers, and the whole Velothi set is pretty competitive with lots of different options out there. But either way, this is still a nice high-resolution texture replacer package that's well worth taking a look at. And next up, we have our modest resource mod of the week, which this week is Bulk Containers by CandyGirl24. And this is a pretty simple and fairly useful resource that adds about 20 to 30 new pre-made containers for you to use in your own mods. And these containers actually use vanilla Morrowind assets that have simply been combined into one module here. So you'll find things like bowls of alchemical ingredients, chests full of treasure with diamonds and emeralds, crates full of soul gems, and also chests that are just full of soul gems, and baskets that are full of, soul gems, and bowls that are full of soul gems. There's really just a lot of options when it comes to soul gem containers with this mod. But anyway, you'll also find piles of scrolls, various bits of paper, and napkins that have been made into containers for you to use. And of course, they don't have to be containers. They could be static objects that you can just use to clutter up and detail an interior environment, just quickly and efficiently. And really, this is a lot like, Danae's Containers mod. And just like that mod, it's just incredibly convenient and easy to use, since, manually detailing bowls and baskets, just takes a lot of work. And this does all that for you. So if you're looking for some more interior container resources that will not only blend in with the game, but I believe also use all vanilla game textures, this is an excellent resource to, just check out. For our underrated mod of the week this week, we have Telvanni Teleporter by Elijah. Now, this mod is really fairly simple. It merely adds mages to all the various Telvanni wizard towers around Vardenfell. So, Sadrith Mora, Tel Bernora, Tel Mora, Tel Voss, and so on and so forth. That can, just teleport you to the other wizard towers, much like the Mages Guild transportation service. This is a cheap and effective way to just get around between the various Telvanni settlements, though you'll need to be a member of Great House Telvanni to use them, and in most cases you'll find a new teleporter platform built into the entry hall of these wizard towers here, where you'll typically find a mage to transport you about your business. And once you've progressed far enough along the Telvanni questline, you'll even be able to teleport to Nissus and also Tel Uvrith, which is a pretty handy convenience feature. And all in all, this is a really small and straightforward mod that provides one simple set of transportation services that blend in, pretty well with the rest of the game here. And also just sort of makes sense logically. After all, why would the Mages Guild be the only ones offering transportation and teleportation when the Telvanni are also, fairly invested in all things magical? In any event, if you're looking for another convenience feature mod for your game, you should probably take a look at this one, especially if you're, playing as a Telvanni. And this week's Blast from the Past mod of the week is a Grand Abode 3 fixed and completed by Michael and Redante Premier. And now this is actually a mod I've been meaning to showcase for a couple of years now. The original A Grand Abode was considered a classic in the community for a long time, but as others have since found out, the final 3.0 version of A Grand Abode had some pretty major issues, namely missing assets, a unique set of armor that was supposed to be in the mod, but it wasn't, making it near impossible to showcase in a complete condition. Well, thankfully, Redante Premier has, come to the rescue here, replacing the missing asset files and fixing up this old mod so that we can finally showcase it And you can see this house mod here. It adds a rather sizable Hollow-style abode to the hills between Mora and the Bitter Coast region, including rooftop dining and some scenic views of both the city and also the surrounding Bitter Coast region, not to mention a back entrance to the estate, which is located conveniently not too far away from the small village of Ode. And going inside, one of the first rooms that we take a look at here is the Great Hall, a fairly large main hall dominated by a set of gardens in the middle, with the rest of the room divided into 4 separate little, areas here, including a display area of bookshelves that you can use to, just put various items on, as well as a number of containers just scattered throughout the hall that can be used to, store your extra stuff in. There's also a small lounge in here, with benches and pillows to sit on, and a small chemical lab, including multiple different sets of alchemical equipment. And a fair warning, one of the valid criticisms about a Grand Abode is that it does contain an awful lot of just, overpowered loot that could unbalance the game a bit, especially if you're playing as a low-level character. And anyway, you'll also find a set of living quarters in here, including 4 bedrooms in total, with 3 that can be used by companions or NPC staff, and one that's obviously a master bedroom for you yourself to use, including a bit of storage and a display space. There's also a small library for you to find, complete with multiple bookshelves, just covered in a number of different volumes here. And there's also a sort of, study table here, where you can just sit back and relax with a book, or work on a research paper, or, what have you. You'll also find an armory that's, curiously enough, already full of weapons, though there is still, some storage here for you to use. And again, this is a fairly unbalanced mod, so, that's just something to keep in mind. And now there is just one more thing to check out here. In addition to a player home, this mod also adds in a fairly modest-sized dungeon complex, just underneath this abode here, an old mining complex that has mysteriously been abandoned, with a few notes left behind, just sort of detailing the fate of the miners here. And really, this is a fairly scenic and atmospheric mod with a rather nice-looking abode, and a fun dungeon romp. And while it is, a bit overpowering in terms of loot and all that, if you're looking for a new and, just a scenic place to stay, and don't mind a bit of treasure here and there, you may want to check it out. Finally, for our bonus mod of the week this week, we have Dagenfell Windmill House by Person Ward, and this is a fairly small mod really. It just adds a windmill outside of Dagenfell, as the name here would imply, and this windmill is located on the hill right outside of town. A fairly popular location actually. There's a lot of mods that use this particular hill for some reason, but anyway, you'll find a deck out back with some scenic views of the ocean, as well as a table and a few benches where you can just sit back and enjoy the view. Though keep in mind, while this is a house mod, it's a very small house mod, and this table out back is pretty much the only dining room included here. Going inside, you'll find a fairly typical, mill house, with the millstone here taking up most of the space. But you'll also find a hammock that you can just, rest in, a nightstand, and also a desk and a few sacks that you can just, store your loot in. This is, really a very small home, but a nice sort of house for those wanting to live out in the Shurgorad region. And that wraps up today's episode of Online Showcases, and as always, download links are down below, and we'll be back in about another 2 weeks, and also don't forget that the Modathon is quickly approaching, starting on May 1st, so you may want to just, get a head start on modding, but in any event, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.